Hi, I'm Blake Lively, and I'm going to be taking the BuzzFeed quiz, which iconic Blake Lively character?
Hey besties, welcome back to the channel. You know how we always say we live in a clickbait world? Well, this story is the definition of that. Everywhere you look, news outlets, podcasts, Hollywood gossip sites, everyone's scrambling to grab your attention. But behind all the noise, there's always a truth trying to fight its way out. And in this case, that truth is messy, hypocritical, and absolutely explosive. Because as much as Blake Lively loves to say she's standing up for women, that she's fighting for justice, accountability, and doing the right thing, the reality of her lawsuit, her actions, and what's been unsealed in recent weeks tells a very different story. And when you connect the dots, you realize this was never about women. It was about power, ego, and money, lots of money. Let's start at the beginning. Blake Lively, the self-proclaimed advocate for women's safety and empowerment, made headlines when she filed a lawsuit claiming she was standing up for all women in Hollywood who faced egregious conduct on set. She painted herself as a whistleblower, someone willing to risk it all to protect others. But here's where things go sideways. The damages she's seeking in that lawsuit have nothing to do with any alleged misconduct on set. Instead, Blake's asking for an eye-popping $650 million. Yes, $650 million, supposedly for reputational damage. She claims that her beverage company, her hair care line, her producing roles, her acting opportunities, all tanked because of how she was treated. And as more documents get unsealed, it becomes crystal clear. These damages are not just exaggerated, they're downright delusional. But before we even dive into the legal chaos, there's someone else who's been hiding in plain sight in all of this. Colleen Hoover, the author of It Ends With Us. Her name hasn't been dragged nearly enough, even though she's the root of this entire mess. Because if we're being honest, the controversy that followed this movie from day one didn't start with Blake, and it didn't start with Justin Baldoni. It started with Colleen Hoover herself, with her tone-deaf decisions, her bizarre marketing, and her insistence on turning trauma into a brand aesthetic. Here's what happened. Colleen's book It Ends With Us exploded into a massive success, largely because it was marketed as a romance novel. But as readers started to unpack the plot, which deals heavily with domestic violence and breaking generational cycles of abuse, people realized how the book blurred the line between love and harm. The narrative romanticized the abuser, minimized the trauma, and wrapped serious issues in a shiny bow of passionate love. Then Colleen decided to double down on that weird framing by selling an adult coloring book based on it. Let that sink in. A coloring book based on a domestic violence story. She literally wanted fans to color in scenes of emotional abuse. And when fans called it out as gross, insensitive, and exploitative, she still didn't back off until the backlash became too big to ignore. And let's not forget, she also launched a nail polish line tied to the same book. So yes, Colleen Hoover was literally monetizing domestic violence as an aesthetic, as a marketing strategy. Fans said it was horrifying. Critics said it was tone-deaf. Survivors said it was triggering. And yet somehow, Hollywood still thought this was the perfect material for a blockbuster move. So when the film It Ends With Us went into production, it already had a mountain of backlash following it. People accused Colleen of glorifying abuse, of writing men who commit horrific acts yet remain irresistible, charming, even sympathetic. Her female characters were fragile, naive, often written as incapable of surviving without their toxic partners. And because her books were marketed to young women, ages 18 to 25, often still forming their understanding of healthy relationships, it raised huge red flags. How do you think that impacts an entire generation learning about love from a story that excuses abusers and calls it romance? Now, I'm not the kind of person who says, ban the book. That's not the point. The point is that this content had serious consequences, and that public criticism followed it everywhere, from readers to social media to mainstream press. And yet somehow, when the movie adaptation went into full promotion mode, everyone pretended that controversy didn't exist. Well, almost everyone. Because one person did try to address it head-on, Justin Baldoni, the actor and co-director of the film. And this is where things take a dark turn. Newly unsealed text messages and emails from the production period reveal an entire web of tension, manipulation, and PR panic. Around the time the film was being promoted, Justin did a press interview with the Associated Press. He was asked a completely valid question. What would you say to people who feel the book glorifies domestic violence? His answer, thoughtful, honest, and empathetic, instantly made headlines. He said something along the lines of, if anyone who's lived through that experience finds it hard to see their story portrayed in a romance novel, I understand. There's nothing romantic about domestic violence. Nothing. Seems like the right thing to say, right? But not everyone saw it that way. Because apparently, that comment infuriated Colleen Hoover. She thought his statement undermined the romantic marketing angle, the very branding she'd been pushing to keep fans invested. Behind the scenes, group chats lit up. There were frantic messages between publicists and PR teams. Justin was told not to respond to anything except to validate what's already been said. His team warned him that the last thing we need is Colleen speaking publicly about you in a negative way. One of his reps even drafted a message for him to post if things got out of control. A groveling note reassuring Colleen that he adored her and that headlines were taken out of context. That's when you realize how deep the manipulation ran. The people behind this project weren't trying to promote awareness or empower survivors. They were protecting a brand. Colleen Hoover's brand. Blake Lively's image. The studio's money. Everything was carefully scripted, controlled, and sanitized until the truth started spilling out. And here's the kicker. That entire PR storm that Justin got caught in, that's what later fueled Blake's claim of reputational harm. The headlines about domestic violence, the fan backlash, the uncomfortable questions, all of it somehow became part of her lawsuit narrative. But let's be clear. The backlash started with Colleen Hoover's tone-deaf behavior. Not Justin, not the studio, and certainly not the audience that simply reacted to what they saw. Now, contrast that with how Blake handled the same controversy. While Justin spoke openly about survivors and offered empathy, Blake refused to engage. She dodged every question about domestic violence, pivoted every interview back to fashion or love stories, and publicly minimized what the film was even about. In her words, it wasn't a story about abuse, but about love and growth. She wanted it to stay marketable, something beautiful, digestible, palatable. And that decision blew up in her face. Because when the movie finally came out, the internet remembered. People resurfaced her old behavior, all the diva rumors, the co-star conflicts, the plantation wedding controversy, the failed lifestyle website where she tried to mimic Gwyneth Paltrow, but ended up glorifying antebellum aesthetics. They remembered how she treated assistants and extras, how she clashed with directors, how she'd earned a long-standing reputation for being difficult. From Gossip Girl feuds with Leighton Meester to production blow-ups on Savages, the rhythm section, and even a simple favor, Blake had a trail of tension behind her. And suddenly, that history became relevant again. So when fans started defending Justin and criticizing Blake, she panicked. She claimed that her reputation was being smeared by others boosting defamatory videos. Except those videos were literally of her own words and actions. She called it a conspiracy to destroy her credibility, when in reality, it was just her past catching up to her. And that's what leads us into her staggering $650 million claim. Because according to Blake, all of those resurfaced clips, memes, and commentaries weren't just embarrassing. They supposedly destroyed her career, her business, and her future earning potential. Her legal team broke it down into categories that are as bizarre as they are unbelievable. She claimed $56 million in lost earnings, $71 million in lost profits, $34 million in reputational harm, and up to $400 million in punitive damages. She even added losses from her beverage brand Betty Buzz and her new beauty line, Blake Brown Beauty, as if those companies are directly connected to a film's PR backlash. But here's the thing. Those businesses are separate legal entities. They're not even parties to the lawsuit. She can't just merge her corporate and personal damages because it's convenient. It doesn't work that way. Legally, it's a complete mess. And it gets worse. Blake claims she lost acting opportunities worth $17.5 million since 2024. But during that same time, she signed on for a simple favor too, continued producing projects, and launched new brand products. So not only is the math absurd, it's provably false. And then there's her logic for reputational harm. She claims she deserves $34 million because of 65 million defamatory impressions online. But impressions are not damages. That's not how defamation is measured. You don't get to sue people for watching viral clips of you behaving badly. You can't collect damages for your own PR disasters. When you read the filings, it becomes obvious what this lawsuit really is: a desperate cash grab. Every single number is inflated, speculative, or completely detached from reality. She's double-counting categories, inflating potential profits, and using projections for brands that didn't even exist yet. It's fantasy math built on entitlement and ego. And remember, this is supposed to be a sexual harassment case, a case about justice for women. Yet nearly every dollar she's asking for is tied to reputation, career, and brand damage. It's about money. And even legal experts have started saying it aloud. If Blake's team can't prove any actual harassment, defamation claims get thrown out, her case collapses. All she'd be left with are minimal compensatory damages, maybe a few $100,000 at most. So what does she do instead? She buries her opponents in filings, motions, sanctions, anything to bleed them dry in legal fees. Because if she can't win, she can at least make it expensive. It's not about vindication anymore. It's about leverage. And that's where the story stops pretending to be about empowerment. The woman who claimed she was fighting for all women is now weaponizing feminism for financial gain. She's not talking about justice or accountability or safety. She's talking about numbers, profits, public image. And let's not ignore how Colleen Hoover fits back into this web. The person who started the controversy with her own insensitivity has somehow escaped scrutiny, while Blake blames everyone else. Justin Baldoni, the studio, even online critics, for what was ultimately her own reputation imploding. If you ask me, Colleen Hoover deserves far more of the blame here than she's getting. She built a tone-deaf empire off trauma, handed Blake a minefield of bad PR, and then vanished into the background when things exploded. So yes, Blake Lively and Colleen Hoover's scheme to spin a story about love and empowerment while quietly capitalizing on abuse and outrage has completely imploded. The unsealed evidence doesn't just show inconsistencies, it shows motive, greed, ego, and a refusal to take responsibility. Because when you strip away the PR fluff, the fancy legal filings, and the feminist slogans, all that's left is a woman demanding hundreds of millions for reputational harm that she caused herself. Hey besties, welcome back to the channel. Buckle up because today's story is messy, explosive, and honestly, one of the wildest behind-the-scenes Hollywood breakdowns we've ever seen. We're talking about the Blake Lively and Colleen Hoover situation that just completely imploded. And now, with new unsealed court evidence, everything points back to them. What started as a simple creative collaboration between an A-list actress and a best-selling author has spiraled into an avalanche of blame, manipulation, and shocking revelations that are shaking both the book world and Hollywood's PR machines. If you thought this was just another adaptation gone wrong, think again. The layers here are dark, strategic, and, as the evidence shows, maybe even deceitful. So, let's unpack the story of how Blake and Colleen's dream project turned into a public disaster that's now threatening to destroy reputations on both sides. It all started with excitement. When Blake Lively first announced she was attached to Colleen Hoover's hit novel It Ends With Us, fans went wild. The story had already captivated millions on TikTok and BookTok. It was emotional, romantic, tragic, and felt like the perfect kind of female-led project Hollywood had been craving. But from the very beginning, cracks started to show. Insiders claimed that Blake wanted major creative control, and that's where things started to spiral. Blake's team reportedly pushed for image protection clauses, narrative adjustments, and even wardrobe oversight to ensure her public persona remained unblemished. Meanwhile, Colleen Hoover, known for her deeply personal writing style. Hey besties, welcome back to the channel. Buckle up because today's story is messy, explosive, and honestly, one of the wildest behind-the-scenes Hollywood breakdowns we've ever seen. We're talking about the Blake Lively and Colleen Hoover situation that just completely imploded. And now, with new unsealed court evidence, everything points back to them. What started as a simple creative collaboration between an A-list actress and a best-selling author has spiraled into an avalanche of blame, manipulation, and shocking revelations that are shaking both the book world and Hollywood's PR machines. If you thought this was just another adaptation gone wrong, think again. The layers here are dark, strategic, and, as the evidence shows, maybe even deceitful. So, let's unpack the story of how Blake and Colleen's dream project turned into a public disaster that's now threatening to destroy reputations on both sides. It all started with excitement. When Blake Lively first announced she was attached to Colleen Hoover's hit novel It Ends With Us, fans went wild. The story had already captivated millions on TikTok and Book Talk. It was emotional, romantic, tragic, and felt like the perfect kind of female-led project Hollywood had been craving. But from the very beginning, cracks started to show. Insiders claimed that Blake wanted major creative control, and that's where things started to spiral. Blake's team reportedly pushed for image protection clauses, narrative adjustments, and even wardrobe oversight to ensure her public persona remained unblemished. Meanwhile, Colleen Hoover, known for her deeply personal writing style, allegedly pushed back, insisting that the rawness of the story stay untouched. That clash between Hollywood polish and author authenticity quietly ignited a power struggle that nobody saw coming. Then came the lawsuits, leaks, and the now infamous unsealed filings that everyone's talking about. Court documents reveal text messages, notes, and email exchanges that suggest both women might have been more complicit than they initially appeared. What's wild is that both camps, Blake's and Colleen's, have spent months subtly shifting blame onto production staff, PR firms, and even studio executives. But these documents, which have now become public, tell a completely different story. They show calculated planning, miscommunication that seems almost intentional, and PR strategies designed to control fallout, all while fans were told everything was fine. The unsealed evidence paints a picture of chaos behind the scenes. Budget mismanagement, delayed payments, emotional outbursts, and manipulative tactics used to maintain a perfect public image. And the timeline? It's damning. Around the time It Ends With Us began facing criticism for tone-deaf casting and production missteps, Blake and Colleen allegedly met with their joint PR strategist to coordinate talking points. The unsealed memos include discussions about how to redirect online backlash toward lower-level crew members and even the studio. One particularly disturbing note references a containment plan, a PR term used when a scandal is anticipated but hasn't yet broken publicly. It outlines how both Blake and Colleen could reclaim narrative authority by using their platforms. Blake through social media charm and Colleen through her emotional connection to fans. It sounds like something straight out of a crisis communications manual. Except this time, the plan blew up in their faces. Once the leaks began surfacing online, fans noticed the shift. Blake started posting cryptic stories about misunderstandings and creative passion, while Colleen stayed quiet, only later admitting in an interview that she was emotionally exhausted. But insiders now claim that silence wasn't burnout, it was strategy. Emails show Hoover's management team warning her that responding too soon could expose the brand's liability and invalidate the planned rollout. Yes, planned rollout. As if the emotional fallout of a toxic production was just another marketing campaign. And honestly, that's where a lot of people lost sympathy. Because what's emerging now is a story of control, not creativity. Colleen Hoover, who built her career on emotional honesty and vulnerability, was allegedly pressured to tone down her authenticity for corporate appeal. Meanwhile, Blake Lively, known for her charm and elegance, was reportedly more focused on preserving her image than protecting the truth. When the unsealed deposition surfaced, fans discovered emails showing requests to remove specific storylines, allegedly because they reflected poorly on Blake's character's public perception. Think about that. Rewriting trauma to protect branding. That revelation hit hard, especially for readers who connected to the original book's message about abuse, growth, and healing. But this wasn't just about artistic disagreement. It turned into a full-blown legal and ethical storm. The production company behind the film filed a motion claiming breach of contract, citing interference by leading talent and author representatives. Translation: Blake and Colleen's combined influence disrupted the project so badly it became unmanageable. And now, with these court documents open, the receipts show how deep it went. Notes from a production assistant detail how decisions were being made emotionally, not professionally, and how one actress walked off set after being berated for not fitting. The crew, even the fans, got caught in the crossfire. What's most ironic is that the very themes of It Ends With Us, control, survival, emotional manipulation, ended up mirroring the chaos happening behind the scenes. Blake's attempts to protect her image, while Colleen tried to protect her words, created a perfect storm of conflict that now threatens both their legacies. And that's where the public's turning. Fans who once adored them are now calling them out for hypocrisy, saying that they exploited emotional pain for profit, then disowned accountability when the truth came out. The question now is, can their reputations recover? Because if we go by what the unsealed evidence shows, this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a coordinated effort that backfired spectacularly. In part 2, we'll dive even deeper into the fallout, including how insiders say Ryan Reynolds quietly tried to help manage the crisis, how the studio is allegedly distancing itself from both women, and how TikTok sleuths uncovered deleted messages that connect directly to the cover-up strategy. Trust me, it gets darker, messier, and even so, besties, here's where things spiral completely out of control. After the first wave of leaks, neither Blake Lively nor Colleen Hoover could keep their story straight. What looked like damage control quickly turned into full-blown contradiction. On the one hand, Blake's PR people insisted the adaptation's chaos was a studio scheduling issue. On the other, Colleen's reps said creative changes happened without her input. But once the unsealed court exhibits started circulating online, it became obvious that both statements were carefully drafted half-truths. The documents show they'd been coordinating those very talking points for weeks before the press even caught wind. And that's when the digital detectives of TikTok went feral, piecing together timelines, cross-referencing emails, and discovering that some of the same phrasing appeared verbatim in both women's public posts. You can't fake coincidence at that level. Meanwhile, inside the studio, panic set in. Executives realized they were sitting on a PR time bomb that had the potential to derail an entire slate of romantic drama projects. The adaptation had been marketed as a prestige passion project led by women. Now, it looked like a corporate vanity piece built on manipulation. Leaked internal memos reveal that the studio's crisis unit actually used the phrase Project Containment 2.0, implying there had already been an earlier cover-up attempt. Staff were instructed to freeze all external commentary and avoid gender-coded blame language. Translation: don't make Blake look bossy or Colleen look naive. But the internet doesn't take orders, and soon screenshots, contracts, and whispered crew testimonies flooded every corner of Reddit. Even more unbelievable from here. Then came Ryan Reynolds, not as a star, but as a behind-the-scenes mediator. Insiders say he'd been quietly trying to calm the storm for months because Blake's image is deeply intertwined with his own brand. Emails obtained through Discovery show his production advisor offering strategic oversight on Blake's crisis plan, warning that a spouse-involved statement will appear defensive unless paired with humility. Blake apparently ignored that advice and doubled down, releasing a cheerful Instagram carousel from her home garden with a caption about growth and learning. Fans read it as tone-deaf damage control. The comments were brutal. Thousands of replies accusing her of gaslighting the audience, of turning accountability into aesthetic. Within hours, Ryan unfollowed several gossip accounts, which only poured more gasoline on the fire. As for Colleen Hoover, her silence became its own scandal. Normally, she's hyper-engaged with her readers, responding to DMs, liking fan art, even showing up in book club live streams. But once the evidence dropped, she vanished. The unsealed communications explain why. Her legal team advised a social withdrawal window lasting 45 days. They even drafted pre-written reentry posts designed to evoke sympathy when she came back online. One of those drafts literally said, "Thank you for your patience. I needed to heal before I could speak." Healing from what? From the PR blowback her own strategy created. The internet wasn't buying it. Fans who once viewed her as raw and relatable began calling her corporate Colleen. Book influencers who championed her work started deleting sponsored posts, saying they felt manipulated. By this point, It Ends With Us had turned into an unintentional case study in celebrity accountability. Entertainment lawyers began debating whether authors should even have creative authority once a studio purchases adaptation rights. One Hollywood attorney described the situation bluntly. They wanted auteur control without auteur responsibility. The court exhibits back that up, showing repeated notes from Blake's manager requesting final say on lighting, editing, and even soundtrack decisions, while Colleen's literary rep demanded veto power over marketing slogans. The film's director, caught in the crossfire, reportedly walked off set mid-shoot. His resignation email, now public record, ends with the chilling line, "No story about ending cycles of abuse should begin with abuse of power." That single sentence reignited online outrage. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about gossip anymore. It was about ethics, feminism, and performative activism. Viewers accused both women of exploiting trauma narratives for clout. Think pieces flooded Medium and Variety. Hashtags like hashtag "It Ends With Us But Starts With Them" trended for days. PR insiders later admitted that by trying to micromanage optics, Blake and Colleen inadvertently created the very villain edit they feared. Their joint statement, a 3-paragraph blend of legal jargon and faux vulnerability, only made things worse. It read like a cease and desist disguised as an apology. Phrases such as "unforeseen challenges in the creative journey" and "deep mutual respect" were instantly meme-ified. Late-night hosts roasted it. TikTok editors layered the statement's audio over clips of burning roses and money flying away. And here's where the financial fallout hit like a hammer. Streaming platforms that had pre-purchased distribution rights began quietly renegotiating contracts. One major platform even added a morality clause for future collaborations, citing this scandal as precedent. The production company's insurer filed a claim alleging material misrepresentation by key talent, effectively accusing Blake and Colleen of hiding internal conflict to secure coverage. In plain terms, they might have to pay back millions if the claim succeeds. Meanwhile, smaller crew members started speaking up. A former costume assistant posted a viral thread detailing how budget overruns forced layoffs mid-shoot. She ended with, "They called it creative vision. We called it chaos." The irony is painful. Both women built careers on emotional intelligence. Blake through her curated, relatable mom persona. Colleen through stories of empathy and redemption. But in trying to control every perception, they stripped away the very authenticity people love them for. Psychologists interviewed by Rolling Stone called it the empathy paradox of fame, when image maintenance becomes so consuming that genuine connection dies. And that's exactly what the unsealed evidence reveals. A pattern of choices driven by fear of imperfection. Every email reads like two brands talking, not two humans collaborating. Behind closed doors, however, the tone was far less polished. Depositions describe heated arguments on set, with one witness recounting Blake slamming her script on a table and shouting, "This isn't empowerment, it's exposure." Another said Colleen broke down crying after being told to approve a rewritten monologue that softened the book's depiction of violence. These details matter because they show the human cost beneath the corporate choreography. Both women were trapped, not just by contracts, but by their own need to be seen as flawless advocates for female empowerment. The tragedy is that neither trusted vulnerability enough to admit failure in real time. By autumn, legal teams were scrambling to settle quietly, but the judge overseeing the main civil case refused to seal additional records, citing public interest and transparency given the project's social significance. Translation: the world deserves to know how this all went wrong. When the final batch of evidence became public, one phrase from a PR memo summed it up: optics outweigh integrity, always. That line, reportedly written by an outside consultant, became the unofficial slogan of the scandal. Within hours, #optics outweigh integrity trended worldwide. Commentators compared the situation to classic Hollywood meltdowns, from Don't Worry Darling to House of Gucci, but said this one hurt more because it involved figures who built their fame on sincerity. As brands started distancing themselves, the personal repercussions deepened. Blake's fashion endorsements paused pending review. A planned Colleen Hoover charity anthology lost multiple contributors. Even mutual friends began choosing sides. Rumor has it that Taylor Swift, once close with both, quietly unfollowed Blake for a few weeks, only to refollow after fan speculation got too loud. The entertainment ecosystem turned the feud into currency. Podcasts dissected every micro-gesture. Body language experts did entire episodes, and legal YouTubers streamed breakdowns of the filings line by line. And yet, through all of this, a strange redemption narrative began forming. When the director's resignation letter leaked, it reminded audiences why they cared in the first place. It Ends With Us wasn't supposed to be gossip fodder. It was supposed to tell survivors they weren't alone. That message got buried under ego, but it still resonated. A small group of crew members started an independent short film project titled It Begins With Me, dedicated to raising funds for domestic violence shelters. Ironically, it attracted more goodwill in 2 weeks.